Alright guys, a few people were interested in me doing a review, so here you go. It's my R56. It's actually clean for once. Looks pretty good there. Yeah, so first of all I'm going to take you a little walk around the car. We'll talk about the interior, we'll talk about the practicality, or lack thereof. And then yeah, we'll take it for a drive. I'm next to some okay country lanes. Take you down some country lanes. We'll talk about power and engine. We'll talk about handling, suspension. I'll knock your fillings out because it's a very stiff car. But yeah, there's my little R56. So I'll talk about the exterior first. The wheels are fantastic. One of the best parts of the car. It's not a real JCW, which you will learn if you see the brakes. So it's actually just a normal Cooper S, but it's got the JCW kit, which comes with the wheels, front bumper, rear bumper, side skirt. I think the wing is the same as the normal Cooper S, but apart from that, yeah, it gets the JCW bumper. The only exterior mod is the diffuser, so that diffuser does not come standard. I'll flash up a picture of what it looks like normally, which is miserable. The diffuser's much better. It's actually a pretty meaty diffuser, pretty cool. You can get one of them on eBay for about 150 quid. They're pretty cool. The other thing that gives it away, being a Cooper S, is that it has the normal Cooper S exhaust tips. It doesn't have the little slash cut ones that real JCWs get. So it's another way you can find out. But yeah, I guess we'll talk about interior. I've already told you about the practicality. I will show you the rear legroom. That's the rear legroom. It's basically a two-seater. If you're small and you put the seat all the way forward, you can get people in the back. I have done it. It's not pleasant. But yeah, give you a little tour of the interior. Not entirely sure why I've done this from the passenger seat, but there you go. It's a nice little place to be. It's not the quietest on the motorway, but apart from that, it's alright. Center speedo is really nice. You get that on most minis, but the old ones have the analog one, which is really... Alright guys, so we're coming up to a little country lane. I thought this would be a good time to talk about power. We'll start with that. So we'll stick on sport mode. And yeah, I'll give you a little talk about the power. As I said, it's a standard Cooper S, so it's not a JCW. It does not have the big turbo. But all in all, it's alright. It's got the little 1.6 that you get in most minis. I'm gonna take that gap. But yeah, it's got the little 1.6. This does have a turbo. My car has a K&N filter, but apart from that, it is completely standard. So stage ones make a little bit of a difference to this car. But to be honest, they get hot. Because it's a small engine bay, the cooling isn't the best. They get pretty hot even as is. So yeah, we're on a little country lane here. I'll drop it down to third, and I'll... No, it does alright. My car needs brakes. Yeah, my brakes are not the best. Also, I should really sort that bag out because it's all over the place. But this is the thing about this car. It's not about the power. It's not about the engine. It's about this. It's about how it moves and how it steers. Because we'll get into this probably in the handling and suspension bit. But because the wheelbase is so short, the way it turns into a corner, you don't really get that with a lot of other cars. But yeah, it's pretty good. Like, the power is nothing to write home about. 192 horsepower is not going to win you any races whatsoever. Like, if you're at the lights next to like a modern BMW 320d, you'll probably lose. Like, especially if it's automatic, you're just not keeping up. You got to roll your own gears, you know. It's just, oh god, I'm gonna get a speeding ticket here. Bring it right down and we'll talk. Yeah, at the lights next to a 320d, you're just gonna lose. Because it's not a fast car. It is light, which is kind of in its benefit, of course. But yeah, it's just not. The power is not what this car's about. It does okay. Again, there's stage 1, which takes you about 220 or so horsepower. But then you got to do the intercooler, and there's just there's all kinds of headaches that come with that. I haven't done it to my car because honestly, I just don't think it's worth it. It's not that type of car. It's a momentum car. You really have to, you plan ahead. You keep your speed up. You know, you try to minimize braking, and you go as fast as possible into the next corner without slowing down. That's kind of how you have to drive this car. It's kind of like an MX-5, but front-wheel drive. But yeah, so that was my little... Oh, we've got golden hour right now. That was my little power section, and I'll get onto another little good road, and then we'll talk about handling. I just wanted to add 2 more things to my previous thoughts about the power and the drivetrain. One thing I realized I forgot is the gearbox. The gearbox is pretty bloody good. It's not like my old Civic where, I mean, that thing had like a metal shifter and it went click 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 click. You know, it's not like that, but it's pretty damn good. It's a little bit rubbery, but for example, when you're sitting at the traffic lights and you put it into first, it goes click click, and it's pretty satisfying, you know? It's also really easy to heel and tow. The pedals are separated really nicely, and the accelerator pedal is bottom hinged, which makes a big difference for me, because I actually use my heel rather than just tipping my foot across. Please don't kill me. Thank you, sir. And the second thing I wanted to mention was the sound. So, again, it's just a Cooper S. It's not a JCW, but it sounds all right. Like, here, I'll give you a little... It sounds alright. You know, it doesn't sound amazing, but for like a basic car that people would have been buying, it's okay. It's really not bad. Alright then, we're coming on to handling and suspension. I'll start with suspension first. So this car is very stiff. It's one of the like jiggliest cars I've ever driven. It's, again, because the wheelbase is short, because the suspension's stiff, you get a lot of jiggle. If you go directly through a big pothole, you will know about it. It's not forgiving. Just have a quick let's have a quick spin first, and then I'll talk you through it once we're stuck behind that van. You will see it's quite noisy. Like right now it's not too bad. Anything up to about 50 is fine. So for a city car it's great because you're not really going to exceed 50 miles an hour or so in the city. So for that it's good. But on the motorway it can be quite noisy. I've had this car up and down the country, so it's not intolerable. You just have to, either you have to have some good noise cancelling headphones or just a lot of patience to deal with the noise. Personally, I'm quite sensitive to noisy cars, so some people may not be bothered by it, but I definitely was, and it's one of the downsides of the car. But now the good news, the handling. So because the car is very narrow, because the car is very short, it has a very small footprint, right? So in this lane, I'm in the lane, right? But over here, I'm still in the lane. And over here, I'm still in the lane. And neither of those times did I touch the white lines. You know, you've got a lot of adjustability, and it really makes driving the car fun because you can pick your line through wherever you're going, which is just a huge benefit. Also, the car has a really good ratio of how long it is to how wide it is. It's still narrow as far as modern cars go, but it's quite wide for a narrow car, if that makes any sense. And especially it's quite wide for how short it is. So what that means is, in the corners, it feels very planted. It doesn't feel like, I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't feel like it's gonna lose grip. It feels like it has endless grip. The front axle is really sticky. Like, it feels like it has tons of grip, and you can keep adding steering angle, and the car keeps pulling around the corner. It's quite fantastic. It's hard to reach the limits of this car. You'd have to be pretty silly on the public road. I have had the car on a track, so I know where those limits are, and they're quite high. Like, you have to be seriously driving it to get into not just understeer, but to be losing control of the car, you know. I've had understeer on the public road a few times. Sometimes it can catch you off guard, especially like the tires I have on the car are not the best. I didn't really do this in the power section, but here's a little second to third gear pull. You can see the car does all right. Like, it's not slow, but you do have to work that engine quite hard to get the best from it, you know? Now again, onto the handling, you can see like we're jiggling all over the place. The camera's got stabilization built in, so maybe you don't feel it as much, but I can guarantee you we are quite jiggly. You might be able to see it from the movement of the steering wheel, but it adds to the enjoyment, you know. You feel like you're really connected to the ground, if that makes sense, because not because the car's jiggly, but because it feels like it feels very connected to the ground. It's really good. I'll talk about the steering now. We went through all the handling stuff. The steering, as far as modern cars go, is really good. The steering rack is very short or quick. I'm not sure what the right terminology is, but the amount of turning of the wheel that you get for turning of this wheel, I'm sure that made sense, is quite high. So you don't have to turn the steering wheel much to get the wheels to turn a lot. So that means you can keep your hands at 10 and 2, and you can go around pretty tight corners. I'm going to show you, this corner coming up here is quite tight. Try and keep my hands at 10 and 2. And you can do it. It's not like I'm going super quickly or anything, but if I was going faster, I would need a similar amount of wheel input. Again, it doesn't have, because it's a modern car at the end of the day. I know it's a 2013, it's not the newest car or whatever, but it's still a modern car, so it's still electronic steering. You don't feel texture. Like, I can hear when the road surface changes, right? Because the car's noisy in terms of tire roar. So I can hear when the surface changes, but I can't feel in the steering wheel when the surface changes. My old Civic used to do that. Like, you'd go from one section of tarmac into another section of tarmac, and you could feel the difference at your fingertips. That's not the case with this car. It doesn't have texture in its steering, right? But what it makes up for that, how it makes up for that is with the wriggling and clearly the car must have a lot of camber, or it must have a lot of something, because the way it responds to, you'll see this little dip, like you see the steering input, it wriggles in your hands. It's quite cool. It's very enjoyable. It feels very interactive. It feels quite analog, even though it is electronic steering, and it doesn't give you texture. But it is quite good, and especially because it's so short. Oftentimes I drive this car around country lanes with just one hand. Obviously that's not the safest thing to do, and if I was going any faster than this kind of pace, which is my very taking it easy, having a chat to YouTube pace, it would be different. But it's good steering, you know? And it kind of, what's the word? It enhances the whole experience, because the whole car's got this scrappy attitude where it isn't perfect, but it feels so willing. Like, the fact the steering's wriggling all over the place, the exhaust is making little pops like it just did. What's it called? The air intake is making little whoosh sounds, and like the car's not that fast, but it's a little bit fast. It's a great experience. Reliability, the thing everybody's been worried I was gonna say when it comes to R56s. So look, it's true, okay? I've owned this car for just over a year. It's not been smooth. A water pump died, a thermostat housing died, lots of scares of the coolant being low because of those two issues. It uses oil. You got to top it up, you got to stay on top of it, like every 1,000 miles or so you got to really look at it. It's not caught me out, it's never dropped below minimum or anything, but in about 1,000 miles it will go pretty much all the way down a dipstick. Got to stay on top of it. There's plenty of other problems. My car come with a folder that thick, and it's had probably £10,000 or so spent on it over the years. But it's the very last year of the R56, but it does have 101,000 miles, or 102 almost. So you got to be realistic. It's had a timing chain kit. It's had high pressure fuel pump. It's had all sorts of stuff. I mean, I could dig it up, but it's quite extensive, the amount of service history this car's had, to the tunes of just thousands of pounds. So if I'm going to give you guys some honest buying advice, don't buy an R56 unless either you've got money to spend and you love these cars, in which case more power to you, you go and get one, they're bloody fantastic. Or you, like me, are willing to spend 3 or 4 months sourcing one, going to see them, making sure you've got the right one, making sure you've got one that's got a lot of service history and all the main things have been done. And even then, as I did, you'll still spend £1,000 a year just on fixing it. Maintenance is not that expensive, apart from fixing it. I mean, like just upkeep. Services are pretty cheap. It only takes 4 litres of oil. Tires are 205. They're not expensive. Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, you got to be aware of the fact that it will break. Things will break. It's even the newest ones are 10-year-old cars now. So you got to prepare for it. It will happen. Realistically, they're not the most reliable cars in the world, and they are quite expensive to repair. Sorry about the doom and gloom. Here's suspension and handling to cheer you up.